She trying to make me work. That's what she's trying to do. I got it though. You get the work today.
Or you can push me around?
I'm gonna work on you gotta work on the fight. That was your target.
The target?
Definitely fit.
Yeah, I lost a lot of weight, guys. I'm cutting down. I got slim. I did.
The way it's finished. Once you get 3 days, go back. Look at it now.
The internet blinked, refreshed, and suddenly didn't recognize the storyline anymore. No screaming, no chaos, no meltdown that makes blogs sprint for thumbnails. Instead, Chrisean Rock showed up quiet, focused, and surrounded by energy that didn't feel accidental. And just like that, the timeline got uncomfortable, because when someone the internet has labeled unpredictable starts moving with discipline, it feels less like content and more like a warning. Chrisean didn't announce a comeback. She didn't promise change. She didn't even explain herself. She prepared. And preparation without explanation is terrifying to an audience addicted to reactions. Then people noticed who was in the room. Tessa, Chrisean Jesus. Not random faces. Not clout chasers. These were symbols. Structure. Faith. Accountability. Suddenly, a room felt less like a gym and more like a reset button nobody authorized. Fans didn't know whether to cheer or side-eye. Critics didn't know whether to mock or wait. Memes loaded anyway, because that's what the internet does when it doesn't know how to feel. But beneath the jokes was tension. Because this didn't look like a phase. Nobody expected discipline to be the twist in this story. Not from Chrisean Rock, and definitely not from an internet that has spent years treating her life like a 24/7 reality show with no off switch. The timeline was prepared for chaos, confessions, and controversy. What it wasn't prepared for was silence paired with purpose. Because when footage surfaced of Chrisean preparing to train, it didn't look like content. It looked like intent. This wasn't a random gym appearance. There was no joking, no over-explaining, no captions begging the audience to believe in her. She showed up focused, locked in, and moving like someone who had already made a decision before the camera ever turned on. And that energy alone disrupted the entire narrative the internet thought it controlled. The timing made it impossible to ignore. This came after waves of criticism, recycled storylines, and the same tired predictions about how her life would inevitably spiral next. Instead of responding with noise, Chrisean responded with preparation, silence paired with motion, and that combination is dangerous in a culture addicted to reactions. Then people noticed who was in the room, and that's when speculation turned into obsession. Tessa wasn't just present. She symbolized structure, discipline, accountability, someone associated with guidance instead of spectacle. Her appearance suggested this wasn't spontaneous motivation sparked by a good mood. It looked organized, planned, and planning is something the internet rarely allows Chrisean credit for. Chrisean Jesus showing up shifted the tone even further. Faith has always hovered around Chrisean's public identity, but it's also been controversial. The internet is comfortable with spirituality as an aesthetic. It gets uncomfortable when faith shows up quietly and seriously, because sincerity complicates mockery, and mockery is the internet's favorite language. Suddenly, this wasn't just about training. It was about symbolism, physical discipline paired with spiritual grounding. And that combination didn't fit the lazy narrative that paints Chrisean as permanently chaotic. When someone the internet has labeled reckless starts moving with intention, people don't celebrate right away. They interrogate it. Fans split immediately. Supporters framed it as growth, maturity, and finally choosing self-control over spectacle. Critics dismissed it as temporary, performative, or just another rebrand that would collapse under pressure. The spectators, the most dangerous group of all, didn't care which side was right. They just knew it was interesting, and interest is all the algorithm needs. Blogs tiptoed around the moment with careful language. Chrisean seen preparing to train. Chrisean appears focused. Fans react to new energy, that kind of wording isn't accidental. Calling something a transformation comes with responsibility. You have to acknowledge it if it fails. And the internet loves predicting failure more than celebrating progress. Sarcasm flooded the timeline almost instantly. Memes compared the moment to a movie montage where the main character gets serious right before everything falls apart again. Others joked that this was a reboot nobody asked for. But beneath the humor was unease. Because whether people believed in her or not, they could feel the shift. What unsettled viewers most was the lack of explanation. Chrisean didn't narrate her intentions. She didn't announce a comeback. She didn't ask for grace. She simply showed up and started preparing. That refusal to explain robbed the audience of control. When someone stops performing for the internet panics. Old clips resurfaced quickly like clockwork. Past promises, past breakdowns, past moments that didn't last. The internet has a long memory when it comes to people it doesn't trust. Redemption arcs are treated like scams until proven otherwise, and proof requires time. Time social media rarely gives, but this moment resisted easy dismissal. There was no grand statement to mock, no emotional monologue to dissect, just repetition, training, presence, familiar faces reinforcing consistency. And consistency is uncomfortable. For an audience that thrives on unpredictability, comment sections turned philosophical almost overnight. People debated whether discipline could coexist with controversy, whether faith could survive fame, whether preparation meant a fight, a comeback, or a personal reset. Nobody agreed, but everyone watched. And watching is how narratives gain power. What stood out most was how this moment broke the script. The internet had assigned Chrisean a role, and she stepped outside it without asking permission. She wasn't supposed to look calm. She wasn't supposed to look intentional. She wasn't supposed to surround herself with structure instead of spectacle. That deviation alone made this moment feel like a warning shot, because training isn't just physical, it's symbolic. It's preparation for something that hasn't been revealed yet. And when someone prepares without telling you why, it makes people nervous, especially when that person has a history of moments that shift conversations. Overnight. By the end of this phase, the internet wasn't convinced, but it was paying attention. Skepticism remained loud, jokes kept flying, but curiosity had replaced dismissal. And curiosity is the doorway to obsession. This wasn't a redemption arc yet. It wasn't a comeback. It wasn't even an announcement. It was a pause, a quiet rearranging of energy that suggested something was coming. And when Chrisean Rock prepares to train with focused energy, structure, and faith in the room, the real question isn't whether she's changed. The moment Chrisean's training clips escaped their original bubble and hit the wider timeline, everything changed. What had started as quiet preparation instantly became a public debate, and not a healthy one. The internet doesn't know what to do when someone it's labeled chaotic starts moving with discipline. It doesn't celebrate, it interrogates. And the interrogation came fast. Memes arrived first, because humor is how the internet masks discomfort. People joked about Chrisean entering her movie montage era, complete with dramatic edits and fake inspirational music. Others compared it to those scenes where a character swears they're changing right before the plot goes left again. The jokes landed, but the laughter felt nervous. It wasn't amusement. It was disbelief disguised as comedy. Reaction channels jumped in immediately. Suddenly everyone had a thesis. Some creators praised the focus, calling it the most grounded Chrisean had looked in years. Others dismissed it as performative discipline, predicting failure with the confidence of people who've already decided the ending. The internet loves being right more than it loves being fair, and predicting a downfall feels safer than admitting growth is possible. What really turned this into a mess was the spiritual layer. The presence of Chrisean Jesus split the audience clean in half. One side viewed it as grounding, a stabilizing influence in a life that's been anything but stable. The other side treated it like a prop, accusing Chrisean of hiding behind faith to avoid criticism. Religion online is never neutral. It either inspires devotion or provokes offense, and sometimes it does both at the same time. Tessa's involvement only intensified the tension. Her presence suggested structure, accountability, and consistency, which ironically made skeptics dig their heels in deeper. Because if this wasn't random motivation, if this was planned, then the internet had to confront an uncomfortable possibility. What if Chrisean wasn't spiraling? What if she was preparing? Preparation implies intention. Intention disrupts the narrative that she's always reacting instead of acting. And that disruption made people restless. Celebrity adjacency quietly amplified the situation. No one made grand statements, but subtle interactions told stories of their own. A like here, a comment there, a repost that vanished once fans noticed it. People watched these micro movements like body language in a tense conversation. In influencer culture, silence and subtlety speak louder than press releases. The pressure started building fast. Supporters demanded consistency, ready to defend her if she stayed focused. Critics demanded proof, convinced this was another temporary pivot. Neutral viewers demanded entertainment, waiting for something to crack. That triangle is impossible to satisfy, and the internet doesn't care who breaks under it. Chrisean didn't respond to any of it. No captions explaining her journey. No defensive speeches. No inspirational quotes begging to be believed. Just training. Just repetition. Just presence. And repetition without commentary is powerful. It forces people to confront their own expectations instead of reacting to explanations. That lack of reaction frustrated the timeline. You could feel it in the comments. People wanted reassurance. They wanted confirmation. They wanted either a breakdown or a victory speech. They got neither. And when the internet doesn't get what it wants, it gets louder. Old clips resurfaced. Again, like receipts pulled from a case the internet never closed. Past promises, past breakdowns, past moments where change didn't stick. Skeptics stacked these clips like evidence, determined to prove this moment wasn't different. But the more they tried to discredit the present, the more attention they gave it. The jokes grew sharper. Sarcasm edged into mockery. Some crossed lines entirely, but engagement stayed high. Because outrage is still attention, and attention keeps stories alive. Ironically, the people doubting her commitment were amplifying her presence more than her supporters ever could. What made this phase so volatile was the uncertainty. There was no announcement to react to, no timeline to anticipate, no promise to hold her to, just a pattern forming quietly. Training clips, familiar faces, focused energy, and unpredictability scares an audience that thinks it knows you. By this point, the story had moved far beyond fitness. It became a conversation about identity. Could Chrisean Rock exist outside the chaos the internet expects from her? Could discipline coexist with her past? And why did so many people seem uncomfortable watching her try? The internet didn't answer those questions. It argued instead, louder, sharper, faster, because answers would require accountability, and accountability doesn't trend as well as outrage. As the pressure cooker tightened, one thing became impossible to ignore. This wasn't fading out. It was building towards something. Either a breakthrough that would force people to rethink their assumptions, or a collapse the internet was already prepared to document. Every viral moment eventually reaches a quiet phase that feels heavier than the explosion itself. The memes slow down, the jokes recycle instead of evolve, and suddenly the internet realizes it's been watching something longer than expected. That's where Chrisean Rock's training arc landed, and it unsettled people in ways chaos never does, because chaos is predictable. Preparation isn't. The longer Chrisean stayed focused, the harder it became to dismiss the moment as a stunt. Silence stopped feeling like avoidance and started feeling like discipline. The lack of captions, explanations, and emotional speeches turned into the message itself. She wasn't selling growth. She wasn't pitching redemption. She was simply doing the work without asking anyone to believe in it. Public perception didn't flip overnight, but it shifted just enough to matter. The conversation moved from mockery to watchfulness. From "this won't last" to "let's see where this goes." That subtle shift is dangerous territory for the internet, because it means losing control of the narrative. And the internet hates not being in charge. the presence of Tessa and Chrisean Jesus continued to hover in the background like unanswered questions. They didn't over-explain their roles. They didn't justify their presence. They just showed up consistently, and consistency is uncomfortable in a culture addicted to unpredictability. It forces patience, and patience doesn't trend. Old storylines started losing momentum, not disappearing, but fading. It's hard to argue with repetition. Training clips kept surfacing. Focus stayed steady. The meltdown everyone expected never arrived on schedule. And when a character refuses to follow the script, the audience either rewrites it or admits it never had control in the first place. Some critics doubled down. They brought up history, patterns, and past moments where things didn't last. Others quietly backed off without acknowledgement. No apology, no correction, just less commentary. And that silence spoke volumes. Because on the internet, people rarely admit they were wrong. They simply stopped talking. Supporters grew louder but also more cautious. Hope online always comes with fear attached. Fear that belief will be punished. Fear that optimism will age badly. They celebrated the focus while bracing for disappointment, because internet redemption arcs are treated like fragile glass. One crack and everyone rushes to say they knew it would shatter. The most interesting shift wasn't emotional. It was structural. Chrisean Rock stopped feeding the outrage machine that once relied on her reactions. Without her participation, the machine sputtered. Engagement stayed high, but the tone changed. There was nothing new to react to, only the same steady preparation. And without escalation, outrage gets bored. Consequences still existed, just quieter. Expectations grew heavier. Once people start believing you might change, they hold you to a higher standard. One misstep becomes betrayal instead of mistake. That's the cruel irony of online growth. The leash gets shorter the moment people think you're improving. But for now, preparation outweighed fear. The repetition suggested intention. And intention changes how moments are remembered. Whether this led to a comeback, a confrontation, or something no one predicted remained unclear. But it was no longer dismissible. This phase exposed something uncomfortable about internet culture. People don't just want growth. They want performance. They want explanations. They want timelines. They want the right to react. Chrisean denied them all of that by choosing action over narration, and that refusal felt radical. She didn't ask for grace. She didn't demand respect. She didn't even claim transformation. She prepared, quietly, consistently, and preparation without payoff keeps tension alive longer than any scandal ever could. This wasn't closure. It was a setup, a pause before something else. Because preparation always leads somewhere, even when the destination isn't announced. And when that destination finally reveals itself, whether it's triumph, controversy, or a moment no one saw coming, the internet will pretend it predicted it all along. And just like that, the timeline goes quiet in a way that feels louder than any meltdown ever could. No screaming lives, no emergency captions, just focused energy and unanswered questions. The internet hates that. It thrives on reactions, and Chrisean Rock just refused to give it 1.so now it's on you. Is this the real pivot everyone said would never happen? Or is this the calm before another storm that social media is already warming up to dissect? Is Chrisean preparing for a comeback, a confrontation, or a complete rewrite of her story? Drop your take in the comments, because that comment section is where the real speculation lives. If this breakdown had you leaning in instead of scrolling past, smash that like button like it owes you money. Hit subscribe like you're securing early access to the next viral moment before it even trends. Because you already know, the internet doesn't stay quiet for long. It reloads. Here at Fame Ripple, we don't just chase drama, we track the waves it creates. The silence, the preparation, the moments that don't come with explanations but change everything anyway. Because the biggest shifts don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just show up and let everyone else panic. Stay locked in. Stay skeptical. Stay ready. Because whether this preparation leads to growth, chaos, or something nobody predicted, one thing is guaranteed. When it happens, the timeline will lose its mind, and when it does, You won't hear about it secondhand, you'll catch the ripple right here. This is Fame Ripple, where the silence hits harder, the drama travels faster, and the internet